Hi, I'm Casey Shambaum and welcome to Art This Week. On this week's episode, we visit the Amon Carter Museum of American Art and speak with curator Maggie Adler about the museum's exhibition, Archibald Motley, Jazz Age Modernist. Now for Art This Week.
Hi Maggie,
Hi.
thanks for being with us today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Can you tell me a bit about the significance of a retrospective of this size?
Well, what's wonderful about Motley is that he's one of these great artists that nobody really knows because most of his works are in private hands and haven't been shown in more than 20 years to public audiences. Unlike an artist who's been written about a lot or has been in many museum shows, Motley is generally going to be new to our public. So it's a chance to reintroduce how great he was, to expose audiences to someone they may never have seen before.
The exhibition seems to be structured on significant periods of Motley's career. Can you elaborate a little bit on what those periods are?
Yes, so the exhibition comes to us from Duke University. Rick Powell is a scholar of Motley's life, and so he's chosen for this presentation aspects of Motley's career that go from his early portraiture, from the time that he was at the Art Institute of Chicago as a student, to his chronicling of urban life in Chicago in the 1920s and 30s, to his time in Paris where he was awarded a Guggenheim Fellowship, so he was experiencing the jazz and blues nightclubs of Paris, to 1950s Mexico, and on into the 1960s. Motley was born in the 19th century but lived until 1981, so he's got a more than 40-year career, 43 paintings from all aspects of his career.
We're standing in front of a painting of Motley's grandmother, painting in 1924. Can you tell me a little bit about how Motley's time at the Art Institute of Chicago informed his early works?
If you think about Motley as an artist of the jazz era, you think about him doing all sorts of improvisation, but it really comes from a foundation of learning art history, learning the techniques of composition and color and how the pieces of a painting are put together, owning that, and then breaking all the rules. And so it's a famous quote of Picasso that says, he said that you have to know the rules to break them. And here I think you can really see a tradition of art history, the rigor of the Art Institute of Chicago's training, where it's a traditional portrait with lots of texture, lots of modeling of surfaces, 3 dimensions, and it has all this the trappings of a traditional portrait in that. You have elements in this painting that show her sophistication, the fact that she is learned is represented by books, but then again, it has the sensitivity of the delicacy of mending socks. And so Motley learns from his training and then chooses, like a jazz artist, to emulate what they're doing by using his historic technique and then moving away from it and improvising, creating different rhythms and different textures for his art.
From 1929 to 1930, Motley traveled to Paris on a Guggenheim Fellowship. Can you tell me a little bit about how his time in Paris influenced the way that he was painting?
Absolutely. You could see this as a pivot point in his career. We've seen his sophisticated training, but I think when he's in Paris, he's experiencing all that Paris nightlife has to offer, the dancing of Josephine Baker, jazz clubs, blues clubs, and it's reflected in what he's doing in his painting, which is just populating his canvas with a crowd of people, and yet it doesn't look very busy. And I think the reason that it looks alive but not frantic is just patterning and the way he's used colors to direct our eye around the canvas, from juxtaposing red and white, which you're really not supposed to do, to pink and blue, and the red serves as a little accent note that moves your eye around the canvas, from the dress to the lipstick, to the shoes, to people's mouths, to their nail polish. And so he's very purposefully moving us around the canvas in somewhat in the syncopated rhythm of jazz. And I think that makes this painting almost come alive with the sound of the music that's being portrayed.
So after returning to Chicago, how do you think that this influence of Paris still echoes in his Chicago works after that?
I think he was able to find scenes in Chicago that echoed his Paris experience, so that he would pay attention to nightlife in speakeasies, in clubs, in bars, and bring some of that vitality and color to his canvases. This is sort of still a little bit close to tradition. As he moves to Chicago, the colors just explode and they glow, and there are oranges and pinks and purples, kind of the way music just takes off in a jazz composition to allow people to improvise.
And those color palettes are really what people think of if they know Motley when they think of Motley's painting. Is that correct?
I think you can think of him as a master colorist. That's what really makes him modern, is the fact that he's pushing beyond the boundaries of what is normally seen on the walls of museums.
I want to ask you about this section of the exhibition entitled Hokum. Can you talk a little bit about how Motley is using narrative in these paintings?
Sure. I think Hokum, we tend to associate Hokum with this idea of exaggerated humor, of lowbrow humor, using folklore and stereotype in a lighthearted way, but to draw attention to it. And I think that's what Motley's doing here. I think these paintings have an element of satire to them, but not with an edge. I think in a way he's taking stories of common folk lore that are somewhat exaggerated and bringing them into the realm of high art to draw people's attention to them and to reclaim them as his own.
I also want to talk a little bit about the way that Motley is choosing to depict Black Americans in this category of painting.
I think part of what Motley is doing is using the exaggerations of modernism. If you think of artists like Reginald Marsh or George Bellows or Paul Cadmus, it's all about pushing depictions to the extreme. And I think a lot of that in Motley's work is characterized as making a statement about race, but is also an artistic choice of pushing things to the extreme. I mean, we're meant to know that this is a scene of exaggeration based on the color alone, the purples and the turquoises, and that gives you a sense that you're living in a realm that's sort of other than reality.
We want to thank Maggie for speaking with us, and for more information on the exhibition, go to cartermuseum.org. That's it for Art This Week. Thanks for watching.
I still got your Polaroid. The thought of